Welcome to this week's edition of Coach Prep. Coach Don and I are working on the Zoom this week. We've got a fun show lined up for you. We're going to talk about making a New Year's resolution as a coach. Before we get into that, though, let's talk about patreon.com/everythingfastpitch. If you're in a position where you can help us, if you see value in what we're doing, we would love for you to come on board and become a patron. We've got a great group of patrons that have been supporting us. It's the lifeblood of the podcast. If we did not have the patrons that we have, we would have gone out of business a long time ago. And I use the word business. It's really an expensive hobby. So if you're in a position where you can help us continue to afford this expensive hobby, we would love for you to come on board. I talk about this fairly regularly. The cost of everything we do keeps going up. So if we can get some more people to come on board, that would be an awesome thing. So again, patreon.com/everythingfastpitch. So Don, Stan had the idea. So for our last coach prep of the year, for coaches to think about a New Year's resolution. And his New Year's resolution was to go into 2025 with a clean slate. Basically, starting off the year, the new year, when you start practicing, start getting ready to play the next round of games with your team, whether it's a school ball season or a travel ball season or whatever it might be, wiping the slate clean and starting with a new outlook and a new perspective on the players that you're coaching and the team that you're coaching. So rather than hanging on to what we used to think we used to know about certain players and maybe carrying forward some biases, whether they're positive or negative, to do a kind of a cleansing of the system and start looking at each player like with a fresh set of eyes so that we're seeing their strengths and weaknesses a little bit more clearly. And instead of holding on to what we used to think about them, to start to rethink their potential and their future and what we can do to help them maximize their game.
Oh yeah, I really like that thought. I think that would be great for everybody because I know for me personally, sometimes things in the past always seem to carry on into what we have going on currently. And if I could wash that slate clean, that might give me a chance to really kind of reinvigorate my enthusiasm and excitement, create a good environment for everybody. So I think that's a good concept. And sometimes we might change things up, and those changes might be just what everybody needs to prosper the most going into the new year. So that might be fun.
Right. One, and the thing that I've always thought is, I hear coaches and people talk all the time about, when I coach my team, I don't have any favorites. When I coach my team, I see everybody the same. And when I hear someone say that, I think that's just not accurate for most situations. That I think that most coaches do have favorites, and they're usually players that have made a good impression on them in the past, have been hard workers, have been, good performers, have, been easy kids to coach. And I think all coaches have certain players that they don't quite look forward to coaching as much. They're kind of dreads too strong of a word, but they don't look forward to practicing with player X quite as much as they do with player Y. And I think that sometimes what happens is we carry those pre-existing thoughts and those pre-existing attitudes about players with us. And unless you're a really good actor, I think it's hard to avoid giving some, messaging, some planting the seeds with those players that, that you already do have an idea of what you expect from them. So instead of being able to see their true potential and their true capabilities, that we're always holding on to a little something from the past. Now, sometimes that might lead us to not expecting enough from a player, might lead us to, not investing as much in a player as we could. And so I think sometimes it's important, as Stan led us into this discussion of trying to erase that memory, erase that history, and start to look at each player again, from a new perspective. Because the thing that I think is problematic is if I decided 2 years ago that Don McKinley's a pain in the ass, because 2 years ago you were a pain in the ass. But now it's 2 years later. You've changed. I've changed. Maybe what made me think about you that way 2 years ago, for whatever formed that thought, something's changed. You've changed. I've changed. Maybe your attitude's improved. Maybe I'm, valuing something a little bit differently than I did a couple of years ago. But deep down inside, I'm still holding on to a little bit of a maybe it's a grudge or resentment or anticipating you continuing to be that pain versus giving you the credit for Don's really changed a lot. He's really, grown up. He's really matured as a player. He's working so much harder. He's, so much more team oriented than he used to be. Because deep down inside, my first impression was that you're one thing. And the reality of it is a year later or 6 months later, or honestly, 2 days later, you might have changed and things might have changed a lot. And if I'm still holding on to some of that past, who knows what that means for what our future is going to accomplish.
Or I think that's a great point. And again, as we're talking about this, we're talking about young people that are doing just what you said. They are changing. They are experiencing things at school that maybe change the way they react and engage with people and things like that. And to give them that chance to reprove it or to reestablish some of those concepts and ideas in this new year might be exciting for everybody. And to your point, if I look more forward rather than holding on to how it used to be, if I look more forward to how tomorrow might be better, this new year could be a super experience for not just all the players, but for me as a coach too. So that's awesome.
There's no way around it. The attitude you bring with you to practice as a coach is going to affect everybody that's there. But as you said just a second ago, it definitely changes or creates how you're going to react to what's happening. If you're going in to a practice session or a lesson or whatever it is going, oh, I can't believe I've got to work with so-and-so today. Geez, so whatever. And whether that's going to be true that day or not has probably zero to do with what's happened in the past. But if she walks into practice and you're already kind of looking like, oh, good, here we go again, she's going to read that. And guess what's probably going to happen? Here we go again. If she walks into practice and you're like, hey, I can't wait to get started today. I'm so excited to see you. It's so much fun to, we're going to work on this or this or this or this other thing. And you've got this much more open and welcoming and enthusiastic attitude. I mean, obviously that's got to help. So coaches, here's the reality of it. You're the adult in the room. I don't care what age players you're coaching. You're supposed to be the one that's wise enough, smart enough to understand how your biases might be in play, how your preconceived ideas might be in play. And so our New Year's resolution is let's wipe the slate clean. Start off giving each player a chance to prove where they're at, who they are, what they're going to do, and what they're going to bring to the team, and get rid of the past experiences and start building on the future. No matter what your experience with a player has been in the past, if you do that, you're going to have a better experience with them in the future. If you got along great with a player, I think you're going to get along with them better. And if you weren't quite getting along with a player the way we wish we had been, I'll bet you this is going to go a long way towards starting a better and more promising 2025 for you and your team. So, Don, that's going to wrap up Coach Prep. As I said during our Everything Fast Pitch podcast this week, we're going to take a week break here for the Christmas and New Year's holiday. So we'll be back at it here in January. I think it's the 8th or 9th is when the next Coach Prep's going to drop. And certainly we do appreciate everybody who's been listening. Please make sure you become a patron. Go to patreon.com/everythingfastpitch. Click through the steps. It'll get you signed up. We would love to have more people helping to support what we're doing. Also go to the fastpitchprep.com website. Order your Square Cuts training discs there. You have access to the YouTube channel and the blog posts. Again, tons and tons of information on our website. And also make sure you reach out to us with questions, comments, ideas, and suggestions. Everything fastpitch@gmail.com or fastpitchprep@gmail.com. So for Coach Don McKinley and our producer Stan Lewis, this is Coach Torrey saying thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again in 2025.